Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Just like a really brief summary about me. My name is Senma. I am an Egyptian Canadian engineer by day, stand-up comedian by night. Most of my videos here are about comedy. Basically, I spend my whole entire life trying to be everything but an engineer, even though that's what I do in my day job. I'm mostly active on Instagram. I post a lot of IGTVs about comedy, and I also post a lot about therapy, which is the topic of today's video. So first of all, I was the type of person who I was like, I'm never gonna go to therapy. Like, okay, maybe, like my ideal self, right? Like my ideal self is like, I wake up at 6 a.m. every morning, I like pray the tahajjud, I go for a run out in the morning, and then I go to therapy. Like that version of myself, she goes to therapy. So I never like pictured myself, I never thought of myself as like someone who would go to therapy. And then basically like I always had this underlying like anxiety. I have a whole video about like why I started going to therapy, and I posted that on Instagram on my IGTV, so you can check that out. It kind of tells you like the entire backstory of like what got me to therapy, where I was like, my anxiety just like blew up and I was like, I can't do this anymore. It was mostly when I started comedy and my parents were against it, and I was like, I don't know how to convince them, and I don't know how to like live with this spiritual guilt that I have, that my parents are really, really disappointed in me as a human being. But at the same time, like I really want to pursue my dreams and I love comedy so much. And then I got into like a relationship that just kind of like cemented everything my parents were saying and just made me feel even worse. And that relationship failed, and the anxiety from that was just like so much I could not handle. I felt like I was an expert at just kind of like burying my anxiety and just getting by. But after the relationship, I was like, no, I just could not live. Like I couldn't eat for like 3 weeks. I started to have like really dark thoughts for the first time in my life. I was self-blaming like crazy. And so that eventually got me into therapy. This video, I wanted to do this video on YouTube. Everybody kept telling me to join YouTube, and I was like, bro, I can't. Like it's so oversaturated. Like why am I gonna stand out? But I decided to give it a shot, so this is it. This is me, my YouTube debut, even though I have like other videos up on here. But this is like the first one that's like meant for YouTube, you know what I'm saying? You guys are not just an afterthought, you are the main thought. So I've been going to therapy since October of 2019. So 2 years and 2 months now. And I feel like I grew 7 years in the span of these 2 years. I feel like I've changed so much. Before therapy, I feel like I was very scared of everything. I was scared of my own self. Like I remember in my first therapy session, I walked in and I told my therapist, I was like, I don't trust who I am as a human being. Like I don't look at myself and say this person, regardless of how much power or people around them or status that they have, will always do the right thing. Like I don't believe that about myself. And I don't know if you guys know Lord of the Flies, but it's this book about these kids basically who like get stranded on an island and they have to like start civilization from scratch. And then there's like good kids, and then there's like the more powerful, stronger kids who start to take like advantage of everybody else, and they start to like steal resources, essentially capitalism. And then the leader of the evil kids group is named Jack, and he ends up killing one of the innocent kids who's named Piggy, and Piggy's like, you know, the symbol of innocence. He's like a dork, and they broke his glasses and they killed him and whatever. So I went into therapy and I was like, if I was on that island, I would be Jack. Like I just did not trust myself. And so my therapist was like, you know, she did a lot of activities with me to kind of help me get to know who I am better. And so I did this mental activity where I realized that my deepest, darkest desires are actually just like so normal. There's nothing like, so I stopped being so scared of myself, right? So I went into therapy, I think I was like scared of everything. I was very innocent growing up. So if I ever saw anyone doing something that I personally would never do, for example, girls and guys, boyfriend, girlfriend, like dating, if anyone like got physical, if anyone ever like did drugs or alcohol, I would just be so scared of them, because they were doing something that I was scared of, that I had never seen or done before. So there was just like a lot of fear, because there's like mystery and a lot of fear behind that. Like I just felt like I was a very scared person, easily shakeable. easily rattled. But then after going to therapy, I feel like I've become like a much more curious person, where I actually want to learn and hear from other people from like a genuinely curious place. Like I want to know what this experience is like. I want to know why you do it. I want to know why you live this lifestyle. What does it feel like? Talk to me about it. What are the pros and cons? Like, what are the repercussions? Like, I'm much more curious of a human being, and I feel like that stripped a lot of the fear and the judgment from me. I was also like extremely ignorant, of course, of my own self, of my own background, of my own childhood. What in my childhood contributes to the way I am now, or why am I the way I am right now? So, for example, one of my qualities is that I overshare. And before, I used to always get mad at myself. Like, why are you like this? Why do you overshare? Like, I would always have these like negative self-talks. And then I realized, like, after a little bit of therapy that, I never received a lot of attention or validation growing up. And so that's why I would always overshare with strangers or with friends, because I would get the validation that I was seeking from them, or get the attention I was seeking from them. Also, my type of personality, which is like ENFP, like more extroverted, whatever, is the type of personality that needs to talk things out in order to process it. So I could understand those parts of myself better, and instead of being mad at myself, like, why do you always overshare? Why are you like this? Why are you like this? Now I'm like, listen, I know myself. I need to talk it out with like 1 to 2 people, and then I'll be good. So I started to develop a lot of self-trust. I started to develop a sense of self. I started to develop a stronger understanding of the world and the human experience, or like the human condition. For example, let's talk about like romance and relationships. I used to always have this thought in my mind that, like, I always used to have this thought that, like, if you ever, meet someone that you get along with and you fall in love with, like, that's it. This is the one. You have to just like make it work no matter what. No matter the incompatibilities, like, you have to make it work. And so therapy helps me learn that, intimacy is kind of like on a spectrum. You don't want someone, obviously, who doesn't believe in commitment, who's like, like sleeping with like 15 people a week or something like that. Like, that's not true intimacy, because it's like a defense mechanism for them to be able to close themselves off from everyone. But at the same time, you also don't want to be someone who is like so in love with the person in front of them and just doesn't see a way out and like forces it to work, even if they're extremely unhappy in the relationship or if it's not serving them. Real intimacy is somewhere in the middle, where you put in the maximum amount of effort that you can, but if it's not working, like, you can let it go and walk away. And that's another thing. Like, I used to always think with the breakups, like, there has to be one bad person and one good person. But now I'm like, or there could just be 2 good people, but there's incompatibility. So it's kind of given me a lot of wisdom, like, to be able to appreciate the human experience more, and to know that there's a lot of risk in interpersonal relationships, romantic, platonic, like friendships, family. It's kind of like made me understand the human condition a lot better, and to surrender to uncertainty. Even with something like dating, for example, I used to approach dating. I know people don't like that title in the Muslim community. You can say talking, okay, or like the talking phase. I used to approach dating as like in a much more robotic way. So I used to, if there was ever anyone I was interested in, I would ask them like a list of questions. I would just like go through the checklist approach. I actually have a 200 question document called like the ultimate marriage questions, like to ask someone. And guess what? I got into a relationship where the person gave me the most excellent answers ever. And then eventually they gave the best answers. And then when it actually came down to it, they behaved so differently. And it's not that they lied to me intentionally. I feel like people lie all the time because they actually don't know themselves. They actually don't know how they would behave in that situation until they got into it. It's like, people say like, oh, I would fight the bear. And it's like, no, actually, you would run. You would run. You would play dead. You would cry. And they don't actually know until they get into it, right? So it kind of taught me the importance of dating, which is that you get to know someone, like you are asking them the questions through getting to know them with time. And instead of listening to their answers, you're watching their behavior. because that's going to give you the answers. Do you want someone to tell you how they're going to act, or do you want to just see them act it? Also, I saw things as really black and white, like as right and wrong. And I feel like the more I go through life, the more empathy I'm gaining, in that I can kind of understand why people do the things that they do based on the context and their point of view in the scenario. So I can, like, let's say two people break up, for example, like I can say that I can support one of them and be like, yeah, he's wrong because he broke up with you. But I can also empathize and understand with the other party why they did what they did. Like, it's made me see things in a much more nuanced, much more gray perspective. And that has made me a lot more compassionate, because now I understand the thought process that people go through when they're making certain decisions that, you know, previously I would have been like, oh my God, how could they do that? But when I start to see things more gray and more nuanced, and I start to empathize with people more, I can see myself, you know, coming to the same conclusion or doing the same thing that they did if I were in their shoes. So it makes me much more respectful and much more compassionate towards them. Also, because of the fact that I had a really low sense of self, I consequently used to put people on pedestals. I used to be like, oh my God, this person, they're so smart, they're so successful in their job, so they must be just like a prophet. Like, they must be so smart, so knowledgeable, they must have it together. Now, after going through therapy, I can read people a lot faster. I can read them a lot quicker. It's just like, I can see my flaws a lot better. So I can now spot the flaws. I can almost like psychoanalyze people like much quicker. And that has made me almost like kick them off of a pedestal, because I realized, like, no offense, but people are full of shit. Most people are full of shit. You know, they could be so successful in one area of their life, but then like emotionally, they're just a mess. They have absolutely no idea what's going on inside of themselves internally. But, you know, career-wise, they might be amazing, or, you know, they might have a lot of pent-up issues inside of them because they're denying a lot of things in their own lives for themselves. They might have like a really black and white idea of like how the world works. Like, it's honestly just made me see people a lot differently. And don't get me wrong, like, I still admire a lot of people. There's a lot of qualities that I see in people that I'm like, wow, this is amazing, I wish I had it. But nobody is perfect in my mind anymore. And even the most, like, let's say the most intelligent, emotionally intelligent person I know, or the most, you know, the kindest, most graceful person I know, there's still so many things that they do in their life that I don't agree with. And there's still a lot of traits in them that I'm like, oh wow, like, this is not admirable, or this is a lot of trauma that they have to like go through. So it's kind of made me feel more confident in knowing that other people are not as amazing as I make them seem in my head. That was definitely something that I gained in therapy, and that has also helped romantically, because I used to go into dating thinking I need to get this person to, like, I need to get this person in front of me to like me and to approve of me, and my goal in this date is to not be rejected. And instead of like identifying with the male now, I feel like dating has changed for me in that I will enter the situation and be like, how does this serve me? Is this person able to meet my needs? So it's kind of like helped me center myself more in like a more confident, from a more confident approach. Yeah, I feel like just generally I've gained a lot of awareness from going to therapy. It's mellowed me out a lot. It's made me a lot less anxious. It's made me just so much more at peace. And I mean that in a good and bad way. Like, the peace that I have gained from awareness is that I don't put a lot of weight into things that can make me very happy. Like, I don't project a lot into, let's say, like a romantic situation. So I don't get as happy as I used to get. Like, the highs are not as high, but the lows are also not as low. So I feel like I'm like alternating between this like plus and minus 5 as opposed to like plus and minus 10, right? Like, I truly believe that real, genuine, euphoric happiness that doesn't come at a cost or a crash is not in this life. Like, I truly believe that it's in the afterlife. But it's just generally, therapy has made me a lot calmer, a lot more mellow. It's also made me like hella aware of my feelings, and consequently it has made me not be controlled by my feelings. Like before, if I was ever triggered by something, like let's say something made me jealous or made me mad or made me scared, then the whole week I'm just in a bad mood and I don't know why. Right now, I'm able to like catch it, like nip it in the bud right when it happens. Like I'm like, why do I feel bad? Oh, I'm triggered because this person said something about a job that like I always wanted to get and it just threw me off. And what are all the feelings I feel? I pull out the feelings wheel. You can literally Google like a feelings wheel and you can identify like what is it exactly that you feel. I feel defeated, I feel humiliated, I feel embarrassed, I feel whatever, and I just let it all out, journal all of it, and then that's it. I'm free. I just expressed it and I'm free now. It's introduced me to so many concepts like the shadow self, attachment styles, narcissistic parents, co-narcissism, internal family system, and the different parts of your subconscious. All of these topics I talk about on my Instagram, on my IGTV, because when I was going through therapy, it was literally the most powerful and the most transformative part of my life. And people would ask me all the time, like, how's work going and how's comedy going? And I was like, yeah, it's going. But what I'm really doing is therapy. Like, that was actually my full-time job. I would go home after each therapy session and transcribe it. So I have over 150 transcribed therapy sessions. I've spoken to multiple therapists. I used to at one point see 2 therapists a week. One of them was free, but it was part of like a really good program. And the whole time I was learning about it, I was like, this is so powerful. This is so liberating. This is so just like freeing. And I was like, I want as many Muslims to know about this as possible. Like, I'm actually shocked that there's still a stigma around therapy. In fact, I've gotten to a point now, like I used to be super self-righteous religiously. Now I feel like I've shifted self-righteousness. Like it's more so about emotional, intellectual, psychological things. Now, like, I would actually look at a person who doesn't want to go to therapy and be like, that's a red flag, to be honest, because therapy is a lot of hard work. In order for you to actually really grow in therapy, you have to want to. You have to be ready to do it. It's really tough. Like, there are times I've gone into therapy and I've come out where my stomach, like I felt sick to my stomach because of the epiphany that I came to, or because of how I realized something in my childhood is like really still affecting me now as an adult. You're gonna have to answer really tough questions. You're gonna have to go there when you don't want to with a therapist. You're gonna have to be honest with the therapist and actually say things. Your ego is gonna take so many hits because, you know, you're gonna take their criticism or whatever they point out as like a direct attack, but that's kind of the most effective way that you can grow in therapy. Also, like, from a like logistical perspective, I have changed a lot of aspects of my life after going to therapy. Like, I moved out of my parents' home. I moved out twice. I moved out with a roommate, and then after a year I moved out alone, so I live alone now. I feel like for the first time in my life, I don't put like all my weight and focus and sole purpose in life on trying to find a man or like being in a relationship. Like, the way I look at relationships now are so different. Like, I think they're beautiful. I would love to be in a long-term relationship. I think, you know, the level of intimacy that you have with a partner, and the amount of character refinement that can come out in a relationship is so beautiful and wonderful. But at the same time, I know how awful it can make your life if you're with a partner who doesn't see you, who doesn't make you feel special, who doesn't get you. And if there's like a clash in that way, then your life's just gonna be miserable basically, and you'll have to overcompensate in a lot of other ways by putting other people down, or, you know, trying to like convince yourself to be in it, or you'll act out in a lot of ways. Like, it'll come out basically. Yeah, I just see things a lot differently now, and I'm a lot more patient and compassionate with myself. I feel like I'm creating a life that I really love. So I just really wanted to kind of share that with everyone. Okay, thank you so much.